The Second World War brought forth numerous tactical innovations, many born from desperation, as nations found themselves with their backs against the wall. By late 1944, Imperial Japan faced an increasingly dire strategic situation in the Pacific. American forces were advancing island by island toward the Japanese homeland, and the once mighty Japanese Naval Air Force had lost most of its experienced pilots. It was in this context that a desperate measure emerged, the special attack units known as Kamikaze. The name Kamikaze, meaning divine wind, referenced the typhoons that had twice saved Japan from Mongol invasion fleets in the 13th century. Now, in the 20th century, Japan's military leadership hoped that pilots deliberately crashing their aircraft into American ships would turn the tide of war once again. When American naval forces first encountered these intentional crash attacks during the Philippines campaign in October 1944, they were shocked by both the tactic itself and its effectiveness. Initial reports described how single aircraft, often appearing suddenly from cloud cover or the sun's glare, would dive directly at ships with devastating results. The question that immediately concerned American military leadership was straightforward but crucial. Why were these attacks proving so destructive compared to conventional bombing? The answers would come from technical personnel who meticulously examined recovered wreckage from kamikaze aircraft that had either missed their targets or been shot down before impact. Their findings would reveal much about why this desperate tactic had achieved such devastating results against the most powerful navy in the world. At naval facilities in rear areas, American technicians carefully laid out recovered fragments from downed kamikaze aircraft. What they discovered was both surprising and concerning. First, they noted that many of the aircraft had been specifically modified for their one-way missions. Standard equipment deemed unnecessary for a non-returning flight had been removed. Radio sets, armament, except for a small defensive capability, and even some safety equipment. This allowed for greater fuel capacity or, more significantly, space for larger explosive payloads. One of the most important discoveries came when examining the explosive ordnance carried by the kamikaze aircraft. Unlike conventional bombs designed to be dropped from altitude, many kamikaze planes carried specially adapted bombs or were themselves transformed into flying bombs. Some aircraft carried modified naval shells or specialized land bombs that had been adapted with contact fuses designed to detonate on impact rather than after a delay. Others carried unique bombs specifically designed for kamikaze missions, with improved aerodynamics that enhanced the aircraft's handling during its final approach. Technical officers were particularly struck by the placement of explosives within some recovered aircraft. Rather than merely attaching conventional bombs to the exterior of the plane, as was sometimes assumed, they discovered that, in many cases, the airframe itself had been modified to accommodate additional explosive material. Some aircraft had their wings partially filled with explosives or carried specially designed containers of explosive material in the fuselage. This integration of the explosive payload with the aircraft structure made the entire plane a weapon, significantly increasing the destructive potential beyond what conventional bombing could achieve. Another key factor that emerged from these examinations was the effect of kinetic energy. A fully fueled aircraft weighing several tons and traveling at speeds of over 300 miles per hour carried enormous kinetic energy. When this energy was combined with several hundred pounds of explosives, the result was far more destructive than a conventional bomb of similar explosive weight. The technicians calculated that this combination of mass, velocity, and explosives created an effect comparable to a much larger conventional bomb. The technical reports also highlighted the psychological impact of these attacks. Unlike conventional air raids, where sailors could take some comfort in the statistical improbability of a single bomb hitting their specific position, kamikaze attacks brought the terrifying certainty of a human-guided missile actively seeking to strike their vessel. This psychological aspect, while not quantifiable in technical terms, was noted by medical officers as having a significant impact on crew readiness and morale. As American forces pushed closer to Japan, they encountered increasingly sophisticated kamikaze tactics. The Japanese adapted their approach based on combat experience, and American technicians continued to find evidence of these refinements in recovered wreckage. One significant development was the use of specially selected aircraft for these missions. While early kamikaze attacks often utilized older aircraft deemed less valuable for conventional operations, later in the campaign, the Japanese began to specifically design and modify aircraft for the kamikaze role. The Yokosuka MXY-7 Oka, discovered by American forces and codenamed Baka, meaning foolish in Japanese, represented the ultimate evolution of this concept, a purpose-built, human-guided missile carried to the vicinity of its target by a mother plane before being released for its terminal dive. Technical examination of captured examples of these purpose-built kamikaze craft revealed sophisticated design elements focused entirely on terminal effectiveness, with no consideration for pilot survival or return capability. Another revelation from the technical examinations concerned the pilots themselves. Contrary to some initial assumptions that kamikaze pilots might be poorly trained due to the one-way nature of their missions, evidence suggested that many received specialized training focused specifically on the unique requirements of their task. Documentation found in recovered aircraft and pilot remains indicated training programs that emphasized accurate navigation, target recognition, and terminal dive techniques to maximize the probability of a successful strike. This specialized training, focused entirely on the skills needed for a single attack without concern for landing or returning to base, allowed for more efficient use of Japan's dwindling aviation fuel supplies. By early 1945, as American forces engaged in the Iwo Jima and Okinawa campaigns, the threat posed by kamikaze attacks had been thoroughly analyzed. The technical understanding gained from wreckage examination informed new defensive tactics and technologies. American naval vessels were equipped with increased anti-aircraft armament, particularly focusing on rapid-fire weapons that could engage fast-moving targets in the final approach. Combat air patrols were reinforced and positioned specifically to intercept kamikaze aircraft before they could reach the fleet. Radar picket ships were stationed as an early warning system, though these vessels themselves became prime targets. The technical analysis also led to modifications in ship design and damage control procedures. Examination of damage patterns from successful kamikaze strikes revealed vulnerabilities, particularly in flight deck structures of aircraft carriers. Engineering officers developed new firefighting techniques specifically to address the combination of aviation fuel fires and explosive detonations, characteristic of kamikaze impacts. What made these analyses particularly challenging was the constant evolution of Japanese tactics. As American defenses adapted, so too did the kamikaze strategy. Technical personnel examining wreckage from later in the war found evidence of countermeasures designed to defeat American defenses. Some aircraft had been stripped of all markings or painted in colors that made them difficult to spot against clouds or water. Others showed modifications intended to minimize their radar signature or carried simple but effective countermeasures against American radar systems. Perhaps most concerning to American technical officers was the evidence of ongoing Japanese innovation in this area, despite their increasingly desperate situation. Recovered documents and prototype equipment revealed plans for even more sophisticated attack aircraft and tactics had the war continued. These included jet-powered kamikaze aircraft, improved guidance systems, and coordinated attack patterns designed to overwhelm defensive screens. As American forces prepared for what was expected to be the enormously costly invasion of the Japanese home islands, the technical intelligence gathered from kamikaze wreckage informed planning at the highest levels. Estimates of potential casualties from intensified kamikaze operations against invasion fleets contributed to the complex decision-making process that ultimately led to the use of atomic weapons against Japan. The findings of American technicians who examined kamikaze wreckage provided crucial insights that helped defend against these attacks in the war's final stages. They revealed a sobering truth that the effectiveness of these attacks stemmed not just from the dedication of their pilots, but from technical adaptations specifically designed to maximize destructive potential in a one-way mission profile. The comprehensive technical analysis conducted by American personnel revealed several key factors that made kamikaze attacks particularly effective. First, the removal of return capability allowed for aircraft modifications that maximized damage potential at the expense of everything else. With no need for the aircraft to survive the attack, all design considerations could be focused on successful target acquisition and maximum impact effect. Second, the human guidance element provided precision that conventional bombing of the era couldn't match. In an age before precision-guided munitions, a determined pilot could adjust course until the final moment, compensating for evasive action by the target and significantly increasing the probability of a successful strike. Third, the psychological impact on defending forces was profound. The knowledge that an attacker had deliberately chosen to end their life in the attack created a psychological dimension that conventional warfare didn't prepare sailors to confront. Fourth, the technical modifications to both aircraft and ordnance, specifically optimized for this attack profile, created an effectiveness that exceeded what the same aircraft could have achieved in conventional bombing operations. The technical studies conducted on kamikaze wreckage ultimately contributed to saving American lives by informing improved defensive measures. They also provided valuable lessons that would influence military thinking well beyond World War II, particularly in understanding the challenges posed by adversaries willing to employ asymmetric tactics. The kamikaze phenomenon represented a confluence of cultural, strategic, technological, and psychological factors that created a uniquely effective, if desperate, weapon system. The American technical personnel who painstakingly examined the recovered wreckage played a crucial but often overlooked role in helping counter this threat during the final stages of the Pacific War. As naval architects and military planners reflected on the lessons of the Pacific War in the post-war years, the insights gained from these technical examinations would influence ship design, fleet defense concepts, and tactical doctrine for decades to come. The understanding that conventional cost-benefit calculations might not apply to all adversaries became an important consideration in military planning throughout the Cold War and beyond. The work of those technicians who carefully examined twisted metal and broken machinery under the Pacific Sun contributed not just to the immediate tactical needs of the war effort, but to a deeper understanding of the technical, psychological, and strategic dimensions of warfare. Their findings serve as a reminder that military effectiveness stems not just from technology or tactics alone, but from how these elements are integrated and adapted to specific strategic circumstances. In the decades that followed, as military technology evolved through the jet age and into the era of precision-guided munitions, the lessons learned from those technical examinations of kamikaze wreckage continued to influence thinking about asymmetric threats and defensive countermeasures. The fundamental challenge identified by those wartime technicians, how to defend against a determined adversary willing to sacrifice everything for a successful attack, remains relevant in military planning to this day. The Pacific War's final stages showcased how technical analysis and adaptation became crucial elements in the American response to the kamikaze threat. Fleet formations were adjusted, new radar systems were deployed, fighter direction techniques were refined, and ship damage control procedures were revised, all informed by the detailed understanding gained from examining the wreckage of these attack aircraft. Among the most significant technical discoveries was the extent to which the Japanese had modified conventional aircraft for these special attack missions. Technical officers noted that standard Navy aircraft like the A-6M0 fighter had been stripped of guns, armor, and radio equipment to accommodate additional fuel and explosives. The reduction in weight also improved maneuverability during the final approach, making the aircraft more difficult to intercept. Examination of intact but downed kamikaze aircraft revealed another surprising modification. Many had their control systems simplified, with non-essential instruments removed from cockpits. This stripped-down approach reflected the brutal calculation behind these missions, complexity that might aid in a conventional combat mission, and safe return was unnecessary for aircraft designed never to land again. Another key finding emerged from analyzing the explosive ordnance carried by these aircraft. Conventional bombs were designed to be dropped from altitude with aerodynamic shapes and fusing systems optimized for that delivery method. Kamikaze aircraft often carried modified naval artillery shells or specially designed bombs that maximized the explosive effect upon direct impact. These were frequently mounted in ways that ensured detonation at the moment of impact rather than after penetrating into a ship, as would be ideal for conventional armor-piercing bombs. The technical personnel also discovered evidence of progressive refinement in kamikaze tactics over time. Early kamikaze aircraft often showed signs of hasty conversion from conventional roles. As the campaign progressed, recovered wreckage increasingly displayed purpose-built modifications and specialized equipment. This evolution reflected the Japanese military's growing institutional commitment to this tactic as conventional options diminished. American naval intelligence officers, working alongside the technical personnel examining the wreckage, compiled evidence suggesting that the Japanese had established dedicated training programs for kamikaze pilots. Despite the common misconception that these were untrained pilots sent on one-way missions, the technical evidence suggested otherwise. Documents recovered from downed aircraft indicated specialized navigation training, target recognition instruction, and specific tactical approaches designed to maximize the chance of evading defensive fire. Particularly revealing were the flight path calculations found in some recovered aircraft. These showed careful planning of approach vectors that would exploit known gaps in radar coverage or position the sun behind the attacking aircraft to complicate visual tracking by anti-aircraft gunners. Such sophisticated planning contradicted the notion that these were merely desperate ad hoc attacks. The technical analysis also provided insights into why certain ships proved particularly vulnerable to kamikaze strikes. Examination of damage reports correlated with recovered aircraft components showed that the design of American vessels influenced their susceptibility. Aircraft carriers, with their large, flat flight decks and stores of aviation fuel, presented both an easier target to hit and contained volatile materials that could trigger catastrophic secondary explosions when struck. Destroyers, particularly those stationed as radar pickets on the periphery of fleet formations, suffered disproportionate damage from kamikaze attacks. Technical analysis revealed that their relatively light armor and compact design meant that a single successful strike could disable or sink these smaller vessels. The Japanese, recognizing this vulnerability, often specifically targeted these picket ships to degrade the early warning network protecting the main fleet. By early 1945, as American forces engaged in the Okinawa campaign, the technical understanding of kamikaze tactics had informed a multi-layered defensive strategy. Combat air patrols were positioned at greater distances from the fleet, radar coverage was intensified, and ship formations were adjusted to maximize overlapping fields of anti-aircraft fire. Despite these measures, kamikaze attacks remained devastatingly effective when they penetrated these defenses. The technical officers examining kamikaze wreckage also documented another concerning trend: the Japanese adaptation to American countermeasures. As American defenses became more sophisticated, recovered kamikaze aircraft increasingly showed countermeasures designed to defeat these systems. Some had primitive but effective radar-absorbing materials applied to their forward surfaces. Others showed evidence of devices designed to create false radar returns or jam American radar systems. Perhaps most concerning were the recovered plans and prototype components suggesting what might have come next had the war continued. Technical intelligence recovered from Japanese facilities indicated development programs for jet-powered kamikaze aircraft, improved guidance systems that would further increase accuracy, and even more exotic concepts like balloon-launched attack gliders that would be nearly impossible to detect on radar until their terminal dive. This ongoing technical evolution highlighted a sobering reality for American planners. Despite the enormous material advantage held by American forces, the kamikaze tactic represented an asymmetric approach that could not be countered simply through conventional superiority. Each technical countermeasure developed by American forces prompted a corresponding adaptation by Japanese planners, creating a deadly cycle of measure and countermeasure. The technical insights gained from examining kamikaze wreckage ultimately contributed to one of the war's most consequential decisions. As American military leadership planned for Operation Downfall, the anticipated invasion of the Japanese home islands, intelligence estimates informed by the technical analysis of kamikaze capabilities projected potentially catastrophic casualties from intensified special attack operations against invasion shipping. The Japanese had preserved significant numbers of aircraft specifically for this purpose, concealing them in dispersed locations throughout the home islands. Technical analysis indicated these reserve aircraft had been specifically modified for kamikaze operations, with simplified systems and maximum explosive payloads. Documents recovered from command facilities suggested plans for thousands of such attacks against invasion forces. The sobering casualty projections derived from this technical understanding of kamikaze capabilities became one factor in the complex decision-making process that led to the use of atomic weapons against Japan. The effectiveness demonstrated by kamikaze attacks, even against the world's most powerful navy equipped with the most advanced defensive systems of the era, suggested that conventional operations against the Japanese homeland would come at a terrible cost. In the post-war period, the technical lessons learned from countering kamikaze attacks influenced military development across multiple domains. Naval architects incorporated improved compartmentalization in ship designs, enhancing survivability against catastrophic damage. Aircraft carrier flight decks were armored, and firefighting systems were redesigned based on the specific damage patterns observed from kamikaze strikes. Perhaps most significantly, the kamikaze phenomenon prompted deeper thinking about asymmetric warfare, how a technologically disadvantaged opponent might employ unconventional approaches to offset conventional superiority. This thinking would influence military doctrine throughout the Cold War and beyond, as planners considered how to counter adversaries who might not adhere to conventional cost-benefit calculations. The technical officers who carefully examined kamikaze wreckage in 1944 and 1945 were engaged in a critical race against time, seeking to understand and counter a threat that was evolving rapidly as the war's end approached. Their work, often conducted under difficult conditions and immense pressure, saved countless lives by informing defensive adaptations that reduced the effectiveness of these attacks in the war's final stages. Their findings revealed a sobering truth that remains relevant in military planning to this day. The effectiveness of the kamikaze tactic stemmed not just from the dedication of the pilots, but from the technical integration of human guidance with purpose-designed weapon systems optimized for a specific mission profile. This combination created an asymmetric capability that challenged even the overwhelming conventional superiority of American forces in the Pacific. As we reflect on this chapter of military history, the work of those technical personnel who painstakingly examined the twisted wreckage of kamikaze aircraft stands as a testament to how technical analysis and adaptation can prove as crucial to military success as courage and determination. Their insights not only helped counter an immediate threat, but contributed to a deeper understanding of the complex interplay between technology, tactics, and human factors that defines modern warfare. The legacy of their work continues to influence military thinking about asymmetric threats and defensive countermeasures, reminding us that understanding an adversary's technical capabilities and tactical innovations is as essential to success as possessing superior firepower. In that sense, the lessons revealed by their examination of kamikaze wreckage remain as relevant today as they were under the Pacific Sun more than 7 decades ago.